as with any of these presentations, it makes a lot more sense if we first of all give you a little bit of a flavour of who we are as a university and why we're approaching it the way that we're approaching it. I was going to play a little game to see who knew where Darwin was, but I won't embarrass you or us with that. It's easier to just show you. So we're at the very, very top of Australia. We're a tropical place. We can fly to Bali in an hour and a half, but it takes 4.5 hours to fly to Sydney. So that kind of gives you an idea of how big Australia is and where we're positioned. You can see that we've got campuses all over the country, although our main presence is in Darwin. Whenever we come to America, we love telling people this. The Northern Territory, that area in white, that's our state. It is the size of Texas, Montana, and New Mexico combined. It's a pretty big area. Total population, 240,000. So for us to be viable as a university, we need to reach out. We need to get out of town a little bit, which is partly why we've set up campuses all over the place. But also, we're online. We don't like to say that we have students who are online and students who are on campus. All of our students are online. All of them are using the same technology. So we have a suite with the LMS at the heart, the LMS for now at the heart. We'd like to move to a system where, in fact, the student identity will be the thing that the student logs into at the start of each day, but for now it's the LMS. Most of our classes are using Collaborate sessions, and then we have mobile and we have Blackboard student services. We're a managed hosting institution. And of course, today in particular, we use analytics, and we'd like to talk through that story. It's sometimes necessary to point out, maybe not in America, but last week I was in China, given a very similar kind of address. And in China, they still don't officially approve online degree education. And it's quite useful sometimes to point out that, we are a university ranked in the world. Within Australia, we have the highest success rates for our graduates. They not only get jobs at a higher rate, but they also tend to start at a higher starting salary. And if you think that that's because a lot of them are mature age, part-time online students, that would be a reasonable assumption. It's also not true. Because when you discount that, when you look at our school leaver cohort, we still rank number 1 in Australia. Sometimes number 2 to a university that we don't mention. It alternates from year to year. So the point is, quality online education leading to quality student outcomes is a possibility. It does happen. But we have challenges. We have a retention rate that in Australia is appalling. So we retain about 65% of our students through to completion. In some countries, I'm told that's quite good, but in Australia, that's not terribly good. We have staff who want to better know their students. They often won't ever meet their online students unless it's through a Collaborate session, so they need to understand them better. They need to know more about them. We need students and staff to be more present, to be visible, and a lot of that is data-driven, not just human to human. We need our students to be engaged all the time. Now, what we mean by that is there's certain times of the day when they'll be able to get synchronous interaction with staff, other times when they can get synchronous interaction with peers, and we're increasingly building our resources to be interactive resources, so no more PDFs or static videos. We're trying to make the actual learning materials engaging interactive materials. But beyond that, we're looking to analytics to provide real-time dynamic personalised services. And I've let one of the cats out of the bag for what happens next. All with a view to improving learning outcomes. So that gives you a little idea of the type of institution we are. Spread all over the place. We're technical and higher ed, and we're multi-modality. So with that as the background, I'm going to give my voice a rest, and Bill will tell you about the meaningful stuff, and I'll come back at the end.
Thank you, Martin. So That provided us with a number of opportunities because, like Martin was saying, we have a huge digital footprint because of our online presence. So we decided that we really needed to look at learning analytics and an implementation of learning analytics. So the project was really semi-structured. There was no real predetermined outcomes. We wanted to dive in. We weren't able to pilot this. You couldn't bolt it together without actually doing an implementation. It's not something you could trial. And we wanted to utilise the Blackboard off-the-shelf reports as our early starter. And then we wanted to also get that user buy-in from the academic community. So the project was really designed around project management principles. We had a project sponsorship and ownership, which was Martin as the PVC. We had a university-wide retention project that was running in parallel to our learning analytics implementation. So we were able to use information from that project to inform what we were going to do next with our analytics implementation. We also contracted Blackboard consulting services to basically worked in a partnership with CDU to help drive the implementation. So we had a whole range of on-site visits, consultations, awareness sessions, workshops, and they also set up the technical infrastructure for us to actually install and move to the Learning Analytics platform. They assisted us in our report development and more significantly in our customizations, which we'll talk about shortly. The launch provided us the opportunity to really pitch learning analytics to the academic community. We had a bit of a show and bang. We invited a whole bunch of staff to an auditorium. We launched the product. We made those reports available. It was really to brainstorm and get feedback from the academic community about the initial rollout. We also made it clear there was no mandate or obligation to use. It was really around exploring, sort of trying to garner some insight as to what the uses were and what the possibilities were in the future. So there was no obligation to actually use it. Now what we've found, and I'm sure you probably agree, is that the consultancy investment costs reoccur over time. We sort of thought that maybe it would be the initial curve and it might drop off, but actually what happens is it goes up and down. And it goes up and down because there are several considerations. The extent of the customisation, upgrades or changes to the technology, the evolution or the adoption of the use throughout the institution, changes to data sources which are always constantly happening, and then there's also those changes to organisational structure that influence it as well. So what we found is our institutional costs initially started to go up and then plateau out. But then what does happen is this: will it go down or will it continue to rise? So as the chart shows, over time, as adoption grows, it can go either one way or the other. And it's subject to those considerations that I was talking about earlier: changes to technology, changes to data sources. There's a whole range of considerations there. We sort of themed this. There are many paths that you can go by when you're looking at learning analytics. You could go for Blackboard Analytics. You could use other BI systems. You could do it manually. You could set up a data warehouse. But we decided that we wanted to use Blackboard Analytics, and there were some value propositions for us. We're a small university with limited resources. We have a limited recruitment pool with a high turnover of staff, so that expertise wasn't really in Darwin. As Martin said, we're not a big place. We've only got 240,000 people in the entire Northern Territory. It's a very transient population. So Blackboard offered us some quick wins, some runs on the board. We could get there in the least amount of time possible. Blackboard also brought expertise and knowledge that we didn't have, and we were able to capitalise on that knowledge as well. And there was the integration with the LMS, which was a critical component for us. We didn't want staff to have to log into another system or to another BI platform. It was sitting integrated in the LMS, so that was another key value proposition. There was also professional development, training, support to the academic and professional staff that Blackboard Consulting Services provided us. But we are also developing our own in-house data warehouse, and I'm sure a lot of other institutions are looking at that as well, because we believe that intelligence is too limited until it draws from multiple data sources and the biggest digital footprint possible. This is a bit of an overview of our timeline from 2013 to where we are now. So we started our journey in 2013 with no real fixed agenda. But we paid attention to the stakeholder engagement and all the consultation required to sort of pull the project together. In 2013, we did all the technical installation and all the infrastructure to support the platform. In 2014, we went live with our first reports. We then scoped out requirements around bespoke reports that we wanted to create ourselves, and also scoped out requirements for customisation to context. You'll see that context goes through the whole period from 2013 to where we are now, because context is a really important consideration. We swapped out some reports and replaced them with some other bespoke reports because we wanted to reflect our context. I can talk about that in a bit. We focused on staff development and training. And then at the same time, the university led a national project that was funded by the federal government called Let's Talk Learning Analytics for Student Retention. In 2015, we started to think about the business intelligence. We had more on-site visits. We started to dive further into our customisations. We launched our first round of pyramid dashboard reports for schools. And we also launched our first SQL reports. In 2016, we started to build use cases. We did further customisation. We developed a report specifically for vocational education. And the reason we had to do that was the vocational education doesn't have a fixed start or fixed end date in terms of the semester. And analytics sort of had a dependency on that. So we had to build a bespoke report in SQL reporting services in order for us to meet that requirement. We've also rolled out SQL reporting services in 2016 to, I suppose, what you'd call the professional staff, those people that are in student support, student central, academic liaison, so that they can also have access to data. This year, it's really been taking a bit of a deep breath to reflect on how far we've gone and to start to think about a strategy. We didn't start with a strategy, but now we are thinking about the strategy. We're thinking about those policy and process issues around data stewardship, data governance, who has access, how long do you retain the data for, ethical considerations. We're also starting to have more conversations with the academic community to try and socialise the use of learning analytics across the community. We wanted to understand, is it being used? And did we get it right? What do academics want? What's possible? And we're starting to now publish case studies, and there'll be some case studies published from CDU at a date to be announced because it was just cancelled, unfortunately, because the minister wasn't available. So we'll have 3 case studies published very shortly. The next steps is really about building a praxis community, a community that also allows people to engage with each other, but also reflect on their practice and also bring in some research aspects as well. We're working on a student project around student-facing learner analytics, student dashboards. We made a conscious decision to not enable that when we first went and through our implementation. So we're working with a consortium of Australian universities called the Innovative Research University Network, or the IRU for short. About an 18-month project looking at what a student-facing analytics might look like. We're looking at what are the actions and interventions and how can we facilitate those actions and interventions out of learning analytics. Looking at drawing in more multiple data sets, as we spoke about at the beginning, and a renewed focus on professional development with the academic community. So one of the things we ask ourselves is it being used? And how do academics get access? So we have set up a Blackboard community site. So on that community site, it's integrated with the LMS, and we have a range of information there for staff. The one on the left, this side, is all around the Blackboard Learn integrated reports. So there's a whole bunch of resources, information, guides, data dictionaries, use case scenarios, and a whole bunch of support resources for the academic. The nice thing is it's available in Learn. They don't have to go anywhere else because it's in the context of the LMS. And then one on the other side is our school dashboards. So we made a conscious decision to roll out pyramid dashboards across the school context. So every full-time teacher has access to a dashboard that is specific to their school. So it's actually picking up on the conversation this morning that was happening on the main stage about, I suppose, the democratisation of learning analytics and making it available more broadly to the academic community. I want to talk a little bit about our customisation and our bespoke reports. So we had probably 4 core areas that we wanted to focus on: grade performance, time and date, who's in my class, and measurements of counts. So grade performance, we've done a customisation there that allows us to look at grade performance by enrolment type. We have external students and we have internal students, and we're able to actually look at that grade performance by those 2 parameters. You're also able to then apply those 2 parameters to the number of course accesses, the amount of time spent on the LMS, and the engagement and interactions that occur on the LMS. We were really interested in the time and date, and one of the core bit of feedback we got from the academic community was, I want to know when those items were accessed, and I want to know how long they're spending on those items. So we made a decision to record the first access date and the last access date, and a time and date stamp measurement against that. So academics are now starting to sort of correlate that to, is the date of first access related to engagement and activity across the teaching period? And is there any sort of causation there as well? We're still yet to unpack that, but one of our staff members has done a case study around that. We also wanted to, Martin said at the very beginning, because we are an online institution, 75% of our students study wholly online. Academic staff had very limited visibility of who those students were, who was in the class. It was a student ID and a name in the LMS. So we commissioned a bespoke report called the Student Snapshot Report. That report is available to the academic before the commencement of teaching. So as the student enrolls into the SIS, their enrolment's automatically pushed into the LMS, and all the data surrounding their enrolment is available to the academic. So we highlight some key demographics. We highlight male, female, international, domestic, an age range, non-English speaking background, hours worked, carer hours. So a whole bunch of attributes around the student. We then pull in attributes from the student information management system around the GPA and the percentage of course completion or program completion. We also bring in information about what degree are they taking. So an academic can see that they're in the Bachelor of Arts and they're taking these units, or these courses as you would call them. We pull in the basis of admission, so academic can get some insight into how the student gained entry into the institution. And we also pull in the load for the teaching period. So if I was taking 1, 2, 3, 4 courses in the semester, it would actually calculate that out. So gain some insight into what the student load is and what their commitments are, because we're pulling in carer hours, we're pulling in hours worked, we're pulling in how many units or courses they're taking, and a whole bunch of attributes around the student itself. Academics are using this information to set up retention rules via the Blackboard Retention Centre, for example, and setting up conditions on those rules. So we have a suite of reports. Within the Blackboard Learn Analytics integrated reports, we have some of the out-of-the-box ones. We have student at a glance, unit at a glance, the activity and grade scatter plot, the activity matrix. The 2 custom reports there are our vet site at a glance and the student snapshot report that I spoke about earlier. Within the SQL layer, we have a whole bunch of exception reports around grade performance, around submission exceptions, etc., login exceptions, but they're rolled up to the school and faculty level. So your course advisors, your people that are in an academic liaison role can actually see across the unit set or the course set any issues relating to the student. And then we've rolled out a whole series of scorecards and dashboards in Pyramid. And like I said, they're available to full-time teachers. They get an overview of the teaching period compared to the previous teaching period. So they would have a whole bunch of information around school metrics, activity across the semester, by interactions, by accesses, by time spent, the items in the units and the percentage of items accessed, the tools and the tool utilisation across the teaching period. So whether it's a content item, a tool item or an assessment item. We bring in the demographics that I spoke about in Student Snapshot, but that's rolled up to the school level, so you can actually get a picture from a school and a faculty level as well. And then importantly, academics really wanted to know what activity the student was taking across the degree program. So we have a report there that allows us to look at the student by program and what courses they're taking, and a whole range of data about those individual courses. So we asked ourselves, is it actually being used? So like most clients, we wanted to know if learning analytics was being used by the academic community. So we developed our own report via SQL reporting services, and Rachel, you and Mike actually spoke about that an hour or two ago, and it was fantastic, that announcement.
You guys led the way. Whatever you guys do, we'll follow.
So we sort of were figuring out how could we do that. So we spoke to Blackboard and worked out that we could get access to this data by the log files. So we've got some insight into the actual usage of it by the academic community. This gives you a bit of a snapshot of our usage over the last 12 months. So from July 2016 to July 2017, because unfortunately the log files only retain 365 days of data. So the student snapshot report is, you know that. The student snapshot report is our most commonly accessed report. And I think that's also partly to do with answering that question that the academics wanted us to answer, is who's in my class? So I can actually be prepared for the teaching cycle. The student at a glance report is our next most commonly accessed report. Then you've got unit at a glance, the matrix, and the activity and grade scatter plot. But what we're finding now is that more staff are actually looking at the activity matrix and the grade scatter plot because they want to gain a bit of insight into grade performance and the interactions and the engagement that happens within the LMS. So that's a bit of a shift that's starting to happen now. The next bit is we were involved in co-leading a project with the Malaysian Research University Network and the Innovative Research University Network in Australia. It was a co-project. It has only just concluded, and these are some preliminary findings around. We did a series of focus groups across a range of institutions where academic staff were invited to come in, and we got them to rate a series of reports. There was a whole bunch of reports that those institutions had, and we focused on the student at a glance and the unit at a glance report. So this is really around the usefulness, or the usefulness of purpose. These are the preliminary findings from the discussion groups and around student at a glance and unit at a glance. The first chart report shows the mean scores on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being not useful and 5 being very useful across the 3 universities. Student at a glance was ranked the highest by all the participants. The second chart shows the number of comments. We then asked them to actually make comments on all those reports as well. We asked them to rank them from 1 to 5, and then we asked them for comments about them. So the second chart shows the number of comments made against each report related to the learning and teaching style. Was there any impact on my learning and teaching style in particular? The data analysis, training requirements or the perception of training requirements, and the usefulness purpose. And again, you can see that student at a glance sort of outranks the unit at a glance as well. I'll touch on the data analysis comment a bit further down the track. One of the other things we wanted to do, was we wanted to sort of link learning analytics with the curriculum life cycle to encourage the broader adoption of learning analytics across the academic community. So following the cycle of learn and teach, review and plan, we've sort of come up with this little idea. So the first report would be around the preparation for teaching, which is using you wanted to gain some insight into an overview of your class. The second report would be the student at a glance report during that teaching period to understand the accesses and interactions. The third report we are identifying is the activity and grades scatter plot, which is really around student performance, grade performance, but also very important around that time of grading and moderation. The fourth report sits in the review cycle, which is trying to gain some insight into the unit design or instructional design and using analytics to do that. Number 5 is one of the reports that we have in the pyramid dashboard, which is looking at comparisons across the courses over time. Number 6, that should be, is again around preparing and planning for the unit. Again, looking at how over time the unit or course may have changed. What tools and utilities have been used, and what are the patterns of access? But we've also realised there are more cycles for us to consider. So not only have we now tried to align it to the curriculum life cycle, we've got more work to do. We want to align it to the student life cycle, and we also want to align it to the staff life cycle as well. Just wanted to call out, say, some of the project limitations that we've discovered along the way. What we've realised is that we believe there was an overestimation of the initial interest by the academic community, which has sort of slowed the project down. I mean, as project sponsors, as a project owner, and working with the key stakeholders, we were all really excited about this, but it's taken us time to build that excitement throughout the academic community. We found, again, from feedback, that some of the data comparisons in some reports was not seen as relevant. And an example of that is unit at a glance. And it might be the way in which we've set that up, because the comparison is to the previous, the comparison is the course compared to the school in the same mode. Whereas academics have told us, I would rather see the comparison against the previous offering of the unit to see how it's tracking against the previous offering of the unit. We also, there's the program level reporting options from the LMS has frustrated staff because they are required to log into another platform to do that. And one of the constraints there is that, unfortunately at the moment, there's separate login credentials to the Pyramid BI platform, which has limited people's, I suppose, ability to take that up. And that's something that we want to work on. There's no integration of analytics with any intervention or communication systems as yet that we're aware of. So that inhibits some sort of more personalised services as well.
Accept and retention centre.
Yeah. And it's got a very US-centric language. So one of the things that we would love to see is that, I suppose, the language used in it is more internationalised for context and purpose as well. But we have had some great successes. It's focusing the academic on the endeavour of empirical evidence. We've been able to link exception reports with our SMS services or the CRM. So we've been able to pull data out of SQL using those exception reports to do some reach out to the student community. We've been able to customise to reflect our context, which has been really critical and important for us. I think, again, establishing school dashboards using Pyramid has been a win for us because we've really made that data available to the teaching community. It's not just in the hands of leadership, it's not just in the hands of executive, but it's actually available to the academic community. And I think one of our other big wins is really the use of analytics to understand who's in the class and shape the learning and teaching approach by the academic community. I'm going to hand over to Martin. We're going to do some crystal ball gazing, looking at what the possibilities might be in the future. Thank you very much.
So, it'll come as no surprise to many of you to hear me say some of these things. We've been very impressed at the way that Blackboard has been doing deep dives into the Learn dataset and the Collaborate dataset to come up with a predictive analysis. But our institution is fundamentally of the view that you can ask the most sophisticated question you want of a limited dataset, and you'll get the best answer that that limited dataset can provide. So if that data didn't include the data that was most germane to your question, you've got a problem. So we've been grateful that Blackboard's been doing that because that kind of querying is going to really come to the fore, we believe, when it's done across linked up multiple data sets, which is, of course, what is happening. And we're a firm believer that any sort of broader predictive work with analytics that we do we'll wait until we've got those data sets linked up. Now, having said that, we're working on that right now. What our academic staff weren't interested in is, it wasn't interesting that the student snapshot was the most important one to them. There was nothing predictive about it. It was descriptive only. But they had faith in it because they felt that they could trust the data. They don't yet feel that they can trust the predictive data, at least until they can see it's drawing from the maximum digital footprint possible. Secondly, it's not about more reports. Half the reports we produce aren't being accessed, as you saw, and even if they are being accessed, that doesn't necessarily mean that they lead to action. It doesn't have to be done that way. The real beauty of analytics is the ability to use the analysis to trigger some kind of automated response. It might be an automatic email, it might be serving up some kind of other personalised service. We're quite convinced that that's the future of it. If we went back to our academic staff and said, wow, we got 100 more great reports for you, I'm pretty sure that it would be a short conversation with them. Okay, it starts to get exciting here. For us, the future is in students not just studying with us. We're already linking students across multiple campuses. Why can't we link them across multiple institutions in multiple countries? A student in Australia is going to be far more excited in, an engineering degree. No, that's a bad example, actually. In a law degree. They're going to be far more excited. Well, because engineering is already accredited according to the Washington Accord and URACE. So, a graduate has global mobility. Law's a good one, though, where law tends to be very jurisdictional. But if they could study law at an American university and at our university and get a dual badge degree, it might be a slightly longer degree to cover all the issues, that gives them greater mobility. But to run analytics across that means that the analytics data set is going to have to draw from all the contributing universities. So we've got to start linking that up. And then lastly, and if you were at the panel this morning, I snuck this in right at the end when there was really no chance to talk about it. But let's just touch on ethics. As we merge all these data sets together, now let's talk about what we're doing on campus, let alone what might be happening at Blackboard or elsewhere. On campus, we're doing what most of you are doing, which is a data warehouse, and we pull in data from our student management system, from Learn, from Collaborate, from library utilisation, from access to third-party online tutorial services, etc. We pull all that data together. To link it up, you use the student ID. That's, if you like, the unique key that's common to them all. And you can anonymise that if you like, and you can strip it out afterwards for sure. Has that made it anonymous? I know where a student was on Thursday night. I know where on the campus they were. I might know what they spent. I know what library book they looked up. You put all that data together over a period of time, I don't need your student ID to know everything about you. I know you as well as I would if I had your name and your student ID in front of me. So anonymity is a set of ethical issues that we're not yet equipped to deal with, because the usual methods that our ethics committee apply of, take out name and address and student ID, that's just not going to cut it anymore. But even more than that, if we use this data to provide personalised services, like the Jill Watson fantastic case study at Georgia Tech, wasn't it, Jill Watson? AI can deliver academic tutoring, AI can deliver student advisory services, but it will do so based on a rational response to the issue at hand and the data that it can interrogate. And that's fine if the human-to-human communication that it's replacing is, I'm asking a question that requires a factual answer, and I get a factual answer. I can replace that, and it's relatively value-free, and it's freed up time for the academic staff. But the AI, by definition, learns every time it has a transaction. It learns every time more data is added. So the quality of rational responses it can provide are going to get more and more sophisticated. And it will start to replace some of what we now regard as being in the domain of the academics, helping someone interrogate whatever the course requirements are. Here's my point. Rational responses in that educational context will only ever get us so far. It's a little bit like the theory of evolution. It took the mutant, deviations that made no sense at the time to kick into play when conditions changed in ways that weren't predicted to allow species to evolve and develop. Human social interaction is the same. We need that random input. We need those mistakes. We need the imagination that AI might not be able to provide for quite some time to come. God willing, it will never provide it. So let's just start projecting now what happens when we're using analytics to drive complex AI services direct to students that are going to replace academic tutoring, that are going to replace advisory services. We've all seen the movies where sooner or later it ends up with the AI being deciding that humans are irrational and have to go. Now, I'm not saying that we're anywhere near having to worry about that, but I am saying that we should start thinking now about at what point is the human intervention still important and why? And how does that get weighed up against the incredibly exciting and potentially time-saving and cost-effective things that we can do with AI? Our university isn't doing that just yet, by the way. But the ethical conversations are starting now, particularly as we look to start investing in the use of AI personalised services. That's our story so far. We'd be really happy to take any questions or even hear comments from you about what you're doing that is germane to the things we've been